I went to Brands Hatch yesterday to do a bit of practicing. Not so much testing of the car. It was a track day, so of course you mustn't test. But it was more to do with practicing some things in my driving. But while I was there, I was supported by Rob from 4040. And one of the things he noticed was that I don't run a fuse in the main circuit in this part. I've got a fuse in the, or there are a whole bunch of fuses in the rest of the car, you know, protecting individual circuits, but I haven't got a main fuse in this line that goes into the back of the alternator and then onto the solenoid on the starter motor. So he put me onto these things. So it's just a holder. I'll show you the box for it in a second. I haven't got the fuse for it at the moment. I've ordered the fuse, but there's a fuse that goes in here. I'm sure you know the sort. It's like a square fuse with two brass lugs each side that fit onto these posts. One of the things he pointed out to me was that these bolts underneath, obviously once it's bolted up, they're not in danger of touching anything, but as he pointed out, if one of them came loose and dropped through, you could actually get a short straight onto the chassis. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a small piece of rubber. I've got some very thin rubber sheet. I'm going to cut a piece suitable size and then put that across there. Now I've been debating where to bolt it. This would have been a great position, but I have a feeling that directly underneath this are the brake lines and the vent for the tank that goes to the, goes into the inlet manifold. So I can't do that. So I did think about there, but that's not ideal. So I think I'm going to go with that, like that. I still need to check that this isn't going to get anywhere near the near those brake lines and etc. It's not that it's a big deal, but I just don't want to get involved in drilling holes through here where I might hit the brake line. So I'm going to mount it there. I'm then going to bring this off of the battery. I'm obviously going to have to cut it a bit and then re-terminate it into this side. And then I'm going to buy a pre-configured cable. There's no point in me making up a cable, I don't think. I could do, but yeah, I'll see how I feel. But my feeling at the moment is make up a pre-configured one to go from this post over to the battery terminal. Now, one of the things I don't want to do, because this routing of this cable isn't ideal to go into this holder. I suppose I could swing the holder, couldn't I, a bit further around that way? Probably be best, probably be a better idea actually, thinking about it now. You think I plan these videos, don't you? Don't get that idea at all, because I never do. This is all stream of consciousness stuff. Yeah, the thing I want to avoid is bringing the cable in front of the, let's move my steering wheel a bit if I can. Unfortunately, the leg of my tripod is right through the centre of the steering wheel. So I don't want to bring the cable in front of this eye, which I use when I've got a passenger seat in the car, because if you think about it, the buckle for the passenger seat goes that way. I don't want any chance of it rubbing against the cable. So I'd prefer to keep the cable on that side of that eye. So the other thing I've got to do, this supply here, which I think is just used actually to actuate the isolator. I'll need to extend that because I want that to be fused as well. So that needs to come down here and onto that side, onto the fused side of the fuse box. Okay, so next job is to jack the car up. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to take off the under tray, the under panel on the passenger side of the car, so that I get visibility to this area of the floor. So I'll get on with that, and then we'll pick up again once I've done that. Actually, before we move on to that, I forgot to show you. So this is the thing I bought. For some reason, they come in packs of 2. Why on earth you'd want 2 of these, I really don't know. But, and if I can just get that to focus. So that's what it is, a Bojack Mega car fuse. And yeah, straight from Amazon. Ordered it yesterday, got it today. This turned out to be a lot more tricky than I expected. So I've decided on this position here. Now, I tried lots of other positions. I tried that. I tried here, but the trouble is it's not level. So I don't know if you can see that. It's not going to sit level, and I'd have to pack up this side to get it level with this surface here. But ultimately, I've gone for just here. Now, the only problem with this is that on this side, it is close to the brake lines, but I believe it's just far enough away so that the bolt head, if I choose to put the bolt upwards through this bracket, through this little plastic bracket, or the nut, if I go downwards, I think I'll probably go downwards actually, that will make more sense. The nut on the other side will not touch the brake line. There will be a distance between the brake line and the nut. Obviously, we don't want the brake line rubbing against the nut or something, because then it's just going to wear right through. On this side, there is the fuel feed this side. So the blue petrol pipe actually comes along under here, but that is far enough away. Let me just check again. Yeah, because the petrol pipe is closer to this, although there's a distance from this to the petrol pipe. The petrol pipe, I reckon, comes through about there. And again, that's going to be far enough away from it so that it doesn't clash. Now, because this is bridging a gap over here, my original idea of putting a rubber sheet across the whole thing would still work, but I don't think it's going to be great. So what I'm going to do, in fact I've done one, but I'll show you how I did it. I'm going to just put hexagonal rubber bungs into each of these, so that if they do drop, they'll just drop onto the bung and they won't hit the chassis. This is the rubber sheet I've got. In fact, I've got a bigger bit, but this is an offcut, and I think this will do the job. It is 3mm thick. Yeah, 3mm nominally. If you don't have any of this sort of stuff, I reckon you could hack, a rubber grommet. If you've got a blanking grommet, you could hack that up and probably achieve the same thing. Now, the way I marked this out is I've got one of these white paint pens, and all I did was I drew around here, get some white on it, try and do it quite quickly so it doesn't dry. And then I just put it down on here, press it, lift it off, and you get a mark. Now it came out slightly too big, so if you cut on the inside lines of where it's just marked it out, and also you might need to trim it up. But basically I just then took a sharp knife and saying I'm going to cut through the inside of the line. Not so sharp knife, I don't reckon. Yeah, try not to cut yourself. It should come off now, yep. I mean, crafts and art are not exactly my forte, I can tell you. And as you can see, this isn't coming out very even, but hopefully it'll be good enough. Oh, that looks terrible. Oh, well, it does the job. So yeah, once it's stuck in there, you can see that that'll do the job. So I had another one here, which I did earlier in true Blue Peter fashion. Okay, so that solves that particular issue. So now we'll get on and drill the holes in the floor pan and see if we can get this thing mounted. See if I can hold this camera without it wobbling too much. So the hole is going to come through in this area here, and on the other side over here, these two bits of aluminium that I'm using here are just the pieces I use as the soft jaws in my vise, and I've just hooked them over the various brake lines and petrol lines. So you can now see this bigger one is the vent for the tank. This one is the fuel line, and then we've got two brake lines for left and right, rear left and right. Obviously you've got individual brake lines everywhere because you've got ABS. I think we're fairly safe to start drilling now. Okay, so now we've drilled the holes. What can I tell you about drilling the holes? I'm sure you already do this, but I drill a pilot hole of either 2.5 or 3 mil first, and then I used a 7 mil drill there and a 6.5 there. Now the reason I used the 7 mil was because I don't have a 6.5 cobalt drill bit, but I do have a 7 mil one. So I'm going to have to get a 6.5 because actually that's a much better fit. This one is it's all right, but it's a little bit loose. But I don't think it's a problem. As you can see, it has come quite close to the petrol pipe there. So I do have the option of moving the petrol pipe over to there. Yeah, I can get that out and I can just slot it into that one. I think that would probably be better. That will keep it away. Yeah, that will keep it away further. So I think we'll do that. We'll move that over there. But other than that, you can see this one has missed the brake line by miles, so there's no problem with that. So let's now look at the hardware we're going to use to put this all together. Okay, so let's talk about the hardware I'm going to use for the fixings. We've got M6 hex socket screws or bolts, whatever you want to call them, and they are 20 mil long from head, from the top to the end. You could get away with slightly longer screws, but you can't go too long because otherwise they'll start to foul with the under tray. So this is a good size. This gives us just enough coming out the other side to put the nuts on. So we've got those. We've then got washers, and I'm going to use one washer on one side because this is just a plastic, obviously just a plastic moulding. So I'm going to use a washer there, and then underneath the car I'll have another washer, and then I'm using nylock nuts. So I think I said M6, so these are all M6. M6 is the right size for these holes. So now the hex heads on these bolts are 5 mil. So I've got a 5 mil Allen key, and then I've got a 10 mil across the flats socket for the other side. There you go. So it's fixed down. So my arms are just about long enough to reach here and reach underneath the car to get it. I've got the car jacked up, sort of slightly inclined on one side, so that's probably a good way to do it. You don't want to do it with it right down on the floor, particularly if your car's been lowered. It's going to be really tight. The original idea I had of moving this pipe over to here, it won't work because they're actually different sizes. This one's not big enough and it doesn't clip in properly. So what I've done is I've actually rotated this slightly just to create a bit more slack. And if you look now, there is a fair bit of clearance between this is the bolt that's holding the fuse holder in. This one is the bolt that's holding the battery enclosure. So I can't go too far that way because I'm going to, be against that. So I think we're good, because if you look, if I push it up and down, it doesn't touch either of them. There's quite a gap. So I think we're good. Well, it's the next day, and what I remembered was that I'd already bought some suitable connectors for this project. So these ones, that's an 8mm hole, which will fit into the fuse holder. And this side accommodates 50mm square cable. Now that's the size of the cable that runs from the standard battery box in a 1 Series BMW to the front of the car. That's the one you need, and with the 6mm hole, that will fit on. Sorry, this is 8mm hole. That will fit on the fuse holder, as I said. I bought these from 12V Planet, 12voltplanet.co.uk if you're in the UK. Usual deal. They don't sponsor me or anything. It's just that this is where I got them from, so that might help you. Then the other one I've got, it's got the same size tube, 50mm square tube, but this time it's got a 6mm hole, and that fits my Odyssey battery. So if you've got an Odyssey battery, it's got 6mm bolts into the terminals on top. So we need that. So then you'll need something. You can either solder these onto the cables, or you can compress them, and I'll show you the tool you use to compress them on. I bought this on eBay. All you do, you can see, you lift it up, you slide the if I can get it in here the right way, you slide that into there like that. You put your, in the center, you put your cable through there, then you put it on a nice solid surface and hit the you know what out of this this thing here. So you can see I've been using a copper faced hammer with it, because you can see the copper staining on the top. So you just smash it down, and that produces a really nice solid connection. Now the only other thing I do, and this is totally up to you for preference, is I put some heat shrink tube. Obviously, you've got to put that round the cable first before you put this on the end of it, and then I slide the heat shrink over it and cover as much of it as I can without, covering over the actual contact point, and then shrink that on, and that produces quite a neat fit. Now, this is all good, but there's been a development overnight as well. So in the thumbnail to this video, it says there's a twist. And I'll tell you what the twist is. Let's move it back into the car. So I'm not sure that I actually specifically thought about this and the reason why I didn't fit a fuse, but actually it turns out I don't need one, because I use this Cartek isolator, and it's got an overcurrent protection mechanism in it. So if a short did develop, all it would do would be to cut the path between the negative side of the battery and the chassis. That's how these Cartek isolators work. So it's a bit different to the key one that you probably know and love. The key ones tend to work on the positive side of the circuit. These Cartek ones cut the earth, which is a truly brilliant idea because it cuts absolutely everything, and there can be no other, nothing's going to work because you've basically cut the path of the earth to the chassis. So why on earth am I bothering posting this video? Well, as I've done all the work and shown you how to do it, I thought I may as well post the video, although I have to confess I'm not actually going to cut this cable and install it into this fuse box, because there's no point me doing that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this fuse box out again and put a couple of rubber plugs into the floor. So I spent 2 hours yesterday wasting my time, but at least you can benefit from it. Before I summarise the situation, let's talk about why is my battery in this position. Lots of people put their battery and their fire extinguisher in the footwell, but I always knew that I wanted to have the ability to put a passenger seat in the car so that an instructor could sit alongside me. So I decided to put the battery behind the passenger seat, and if I just pan this up, you can see my firewall is against the bulkhead of the back of the rear seat. And that wasn't my idea, actually. That was Rob at 4040 said that's how he does them now, and that seems to work really well. So that's why I've got the battery in this position. So let's now summarise the situation. If you have one of these Cartek isolators, you don't need a fuse, a main fuse. If you're using an isolator like this one, the key sort, probably mounted on the dashboard with a a pull cable coming out of it. If you're using one of these, then you do need a fuse, and you want to fuse it as close as you can to the battery, because obviously that cuts down the possibility of a short circuit happening prior to the fuse. If you're going to use a fuse, I've told you about the the actual product that you can buy off Amazon that will do the job for the fuse holder. Rob said to me, use a good quality fuse, so I have actually ordered a Durite one, I think, or Durac. Anyway, it was about £5, and it's a 250 amp fuse, which will actually cope with a bit more in terms of short-term surge, I believe. So obviously when you first crank the starter, there's a big spike in current into the starter, and the 250 amp one works. That's what he uses anyway. He's been using them for ages and he hasn't had a problem, so that seems good. So that's how you do that. And just remember, you'll need the connectors to make up the leads correctly, and also maybe a bit of heat shrink tubing to finish it off nicely. Bit of a strange video this, because it wasn't the ending I was expecting, but I hope it helps you if you're using the manual switch, and I look forward to speaking to you on the next one.